Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering your smartphone won't turn on, your electric car sits powerless in the driveway, and the world's most advanced fighter jets have been grounded, all because of tiny, obscure metals most people have never heard of. This isn't the plot of a sci-fi thriller. It's the real-life power struggle quietly shaping the future of the global economy, and right now, China sits firmly in the driver's seat. Welcome to the high-stakes battle for rare earth elements. 17 chemical elements more valuable than gold, not for their price per ounce, but for their necessity in everything from iPhones, wind turbines, and surgical lasers to the systems that guide missiles and satellites. And as geopolitical tensions escalate, whoever controls the flow of these minerals controls the future of technology, defense, and even economic power itself. So, how did we end up here? What's at stake if China decides to tighten its grip? And can the West possibly break free from this invisible chokehold before it's too late? Let's rewind and set the stage. Picture the global economy as a vast, interconnected network fueled by innovation and technology. Rare earth elements, or REEs, are the unsung heroes inside almost every modern device. They're the reason your AirPods sound so crisp, why electric cars can drive farther, and how missiles hit their targets with pinpoint accuracy. But here's the twist. Extracting and refining these elements is painfully complex, dirty, and expensive. For decades, the West was in the game, mining and processing rare earths in places like California and Australia. Then, in the mid-1980s, China launched a meticulously planned campaign to dominate this market. It wasn't just about mining more, it was about building an entire supply chain, from raw ore to high-purity magnets. With looser environmental regulations, lower labor costs, and heavy state subsidies, China undercut competitors. By the early 2000s, mines across the US and elsewhere were shuttered as Beijing's production soared. China became not just the biggest source of rare earths, but the world's unrivaled processor, transforming dirty rocks into the pure, high-tech materials the world can't live without. Today, China accounts for around 61% of global rare earth mining and a staggering 92% of processing. According to the U.S. Geological Survey's 2024 report, Beijing controlled nearly 70% of rare earth mine output. But the real muscle? Processing, turning raw minerals into forms usable in advanced technology. As Corey Combs of Trivium China puts it, China's leverage is more durable due to its control over processing. Why does this matter? Because the West, especially the US, Europe, and Japan, relies on China for supply. In the past 3 years alone, the US imported about 70% of its rare earths from China. Take just one jaw-dropping example. Each F-35 fighter jet contains over 900 pounds of rare earth elements. Without them, cutting-edge defense systems would literally grind to a halt. The global market for these minerals is set to explode, projected to grow at almost 16% per year until 2033. Demand is being driven not just by gadgets, but by the green revolution. Electric vehicles, wind turbines, advanced batteries. As the world races to decarbonize, rare earths are the new oil. But that meteoric growth reveals a dark side. Rare earth mining and processing are notorious for environmental destruction, toxic waste, contaminated water, ravaged landscapes. Most Western countries, facing strict regulations and local opposition, handed the reins to China, who was willing to bear the environmental costs for the sake of economic supremacy. China prioritized the development of its rare earth mining and processing capabilities, often at lower environmental standards and labor costs, explains Dr. Gavin Harper from the University of Birmingham. The world reaped the benefits: cheaper electronics, affordable renewables. The true cost was hidden away in poisoned rivers and polluted towns. Now the bill has come due. As global politics heat up, rare earths have become a geopolitical weapon. When President Trump slapped tariffs on Chinese goods, Beijing retaliated not just with counter-tariffs, but something more potent: restrictions on rare earth exports. In April 2025, China strategically imposed curbs on 7 key rare earth elements and magnets. America's dependence suddenly looked like a glaring vulnerability. Liza Tobin of Garnaut Global puts it bluntly: it is a strategic vulnerability. The U.S. has been dependent for decades, and there's not been a scaled solution to change that. U.S. officials have accused China of dragging its feet on export permits, ignoring promises made in Geneva to speed up sales. Meanwhile, Beijing's new rules and licensing systems have made supply less predictable. As Michael Hart of the American Chamber of Commerce in China notes, some of the delay in export permits is related to China working through their new system, but others suspect a deliberate squeeze. Adding to the tension, China banned the export of its extraction and separation technologies in December 2023, slamming the door on outsiders hoping to catch up quickly. China is the dominant global producer and processor of rare earth elements that are essential for producing high-performance permanent magnets, says Vlado Voivoda of the University of Queensland. These magnets power everything from electric SUVs to guided missiles. Joshua Ballard of USA Rare Earth is clear-eyed about China's intentions. China's export controls are meant to impact U.S. industries like defense, aerospace, and automotive. With every new restriction, American factories grow more anxious. It's not just the Pentagon that's worried. Automakers, green tech firms, and electronics giants all depend on these invisible lifelines. Behind closed doors in Washington, the message is clear. The U.S. must act. The goal is audacious, to build a complete domestic rare earth supply chain by 2027. The stakes couldn't be higher. If China's grip tightens, the consequences could ripple across the global economy. Supply shortages, price spikes, even national security threats. But building a homegrown industry is easier said than done. Environmental hurdles, local opposition, and the sheer technical complexity are massive. Mining companies like MP Materials are racing to expand, partnering with foreign players, including Saudi Arabia's top mining firm, to diversify supply lines. But without China's know-how, now locked behind an export ban, progress is painfully slow. International cooperation is another path. Allies like Japan, the EU, and Australia are joining forces to develop alternative supply chains, but time is not on their side. Japanese trade negotiator Ryosei Akazawa calls rare earths a critical theme for economic security. Recent studies suggest that, given rising costs and mounting environmental backlash, China's rare earth dominance could begin to crumble within a decade. But for now, Beijing holds all the cards. There are further complications. Enforcing broad restrictions is tricky. As Eugene Goltz of the University of Notre Dame notes, rare earth materials can travel through countless pathways and intermediaries before reaching their final destination. Smuggling, shadow trade, and creative accounting all muddy the waters. Meanwhile, as the U.S. scrambles to build up its own mines and processing plants, costs skyrocket. Environmental activists fight new projects tooth and nail. Local communities worry about toxic waste and health risks. Even if America pulls it off, can it do so without repeating China's ecological mistakes? And as prices rise, will green technologies, from wind energy to electric cars, stall just when the world needs them most? Or could a technological breakthrough render rare earths obsolete, completely changing the global balance of power? The rare earth conflict is no longer just about economics or supply chains. It's a chess match with the future of technology, the environment, and even national security on the line. As both sides dig in, a single question remains. With such high stakes and both sides ready to play hardball, what happens if China decides to turn off the tap completely? We're about to find out just how fragile our modern world really is. So what happens if China decides to flex its rare earth muscle to the max? Picture this. One morning, global headlines scream that Beijing has issued sweeping new export restrictions, not just on a handful of rare earths, but on a host of them and their key processing technologies. Instantly, panic ricochets through the world's high-tech capitals. Defense ministries, car makers, chip giants, and the clean energy industry are all thrown into turmoil. Prices for rare earths skyrocket overnight. Global stock markets shudder. This isn't some far-off scenario. Just in April 2025, China imposed export controls on 7 rare earths and high-performance magnets, a direct response to intensifying U.S. tariffs. That shockwave disrupted everything from defense contracts to the entire EV supply chain. But let's dig deeper. What does China's real leverage look like in practice today and tomorrow? First, the raw numbers. China still controls 69% of global rare earth mine production, 61% of actual mining, and a staggering 85% of the world's processing capacity. For some advanced magnets, that figure jumps to over 90%. The United States, meanwhile, is scrambling. Between 2020 and 2023, the U.S. depended on China for 70% of its rare earth imports. The F-35 fighter jet alone demands over 900 pounds of these elements. Without them, production stalls. As Liza Tobin, A global supply chains expert warns, America's vulnerability is the result of decades of dependency. Even if we source the minerals elsewhere, nearly all of it comes back to China for processing. If China tightens the tap, a global chain reaction ignites. Defense contractors hunt for alternatives, but with limited results. Car makers and wind turbine builders scramble, and costs explode. The biggest tech companies face delays and shortages. China's leverage is more durable, says Corey Combs of Trivium China, because it sits in the middle of the value chain, controlling the steps that turn rock into usable materials. But there's more at play than just economics and supply chains. Imagine the strategic consequences. If relations between China and the West sour further, could China use rare earths as a pressure point, threatening to halt exports to critical industries until political demands are met? Some experts draw chilling parallels to the 2010 dispute with Japan, when a months-long embargo on rare earths sent ripples through the world economy. This time, the stakes could be far higher. The world is even more dependent on high-tech goods now than it was then. Governments are waking up. The U.S. has pledged to establish a complete domestic rare earth supply chain by 2027. Major investments are pouring into mines in California, Australia, and even Greenland. MP Materials, the largest U.S. rare earth company, has struck partnerships stretching as far as Saudi Arabia. The European Union, Japan, and South Korea are on similar quests, seeking deals with trusted partners, creating strategic stockpiles, and launching battery alliances. Yet progress is slow. Building a new mine can take a decade or more, and just digging up rare earths is only half the battle. The far trickier, dirtier, more expensive step is processing. Here's a critical twist. In December 2023, China officially banned the export not just of rare earth materials, but of REE extraction and separation technologies. It's as if China has locked the recipe book for rare earth processing in a vault, one Western scientists and companies are desperate to crack. Until new technologies emerge or cleaner processes take hold, the world remains stuck with China as its indispensable middleman. But is there an endgame? Some signs suggest yes. According to a recent study, China's rare earth dominance could crumble in the next 10 years. Rising costs, environmental pushback from within China, and the sheer complexity of managing the sector are already forcing Beijing to consider trimming exports and raising standards. Meanwhile, international cooperation is stirring. The US, EU, Japan, and Australia are exploring ways to share new processing technologies, pool investment, and open up new mines in less obvious places like Zambia and Brazil. The market for rare earths is projected to grow nearly 16% each year through 2033, enormous incentive for innovation and investment. So, could China weaponize its dominance? Absolutely, it already has, and the threat is real. But the rest of the world isn't standing still. Let's play out some possible futures. One path is escalation. Picture a full trade war, China blocks exports, and Western industries grind to a halt. Temporary workarounds, stockpiles, last-minute deals help a bit, but only delay the pain. Over time, the West is forced to pour billions into domestic mining, harsh environmental debates erupt, and consumer prices for everything from smartphones to wind turbines shoot through the roof. Another scenario is breakthrough. Imagine a new separation technology, developed in collaboration between the US and the EU, revolutionizes the field. Suddenly, processing that once took weeks and toxic chemicals now happens faster, safer, and cheaper, even outside China. This breakthrough forces open the market, reduces global risk, and brings environmental benefits. Suddenly, the world's technological future appears more secure and more sustainable. Or perhaps, recognizing mutual vulnerability, international cooperation deepens. Countries spread out their supply chains, invest in recycling rare earths from old electronics, and even negotiate new cross-border environmental standards. The goal becomes not just security, but sustainability. As Ryosei Akazawa, Japan's chief trade negotiator, puts it, rare earths are not just a supply chain issue, they are now a theme of global economic security. But let's not sugarcoat it. These solutions take years, sometimes decades, to bear fruit. In the meantime, the world balances on a knife's edge. One miscalculation, one geopolitical flashpoint, and the entire rare earth supply chain could unravel overnight. What does all this mean for you, the viewer? First, the next time you hold your smartphone, plug in an electric vehicle, or see a wind turbine spinning on the horizon, remember? These marvels depend on materials that are anything but ordinary. Their supply chains stretch from the mines of Mongolia to the factories of southern China, and any disruption can ripple into your daily life. Second, the lessons of rare earths mirror a broader truth of our age. In a world of rising technological complexity and geopolitical flux, hidden dependencies can shape everything. The chips in our gadgets, the magnets in our medical devices, the batteries powering clean energy, they rely on invisible global arteries. If one is cut, the whole system is at risk. There are practical takeaways too. If you follow tech, energy, or investing, keep a close eye on companies working on rare earth alternatives, recycling technologies, and new processing methods. The biggest breakthroughs and profits of the next decade may come from those who solve the rare earth puzzle first. As consumers and citizens, we can also demand more transparency from tech and auto companies. Where do their critical materials come from? Are they sourcing responsibly, investing in recycling, supporting innovation? Push for answers, because even a small shift in consumer awareness can drive companies to adapt. And for students or professionals, the Rare Earth Challenge is an invitation. The world needs new engineers, chemists, sustainability experts, and policy leaders who can navigate the intersection of technology, environment, and geopolitics. The next breakthrough may come from a garage, a university lab, or maybe even from you. In the end, the race to break free from China's rare earth chokehold is a high-stakes, high-drama story. It's about more than minerals. It's about who controls the future of technology, security, and innovation. The outcome isn't set in stone. There are real obstacles, but also extraordinary opportunities for those bold enough to seize them. So, what's the answer to our burning question? Can the world break free from China's rare earth grip? Here's the honest truth. The answer is yes, but it will be a marathon, not a sprint. It means massive investment, global cooperation, and the courage to innovate our way out of dependency. The West's efforts to build new mines, invent cleaner processing, and create closed-loop recycling systems are just beginning. Success is possible, but only if we treat this not as a passing trade squabble, but as a generational challenge. And here's a secret fact. Quietly, behind the scenes, some of the world's brightest minds are betting that the next industrial revolution will be built not on mining more materials, but on recycling and redesigning what we already have. Imagine a world where rare earths are endlessly reusable, where your old smartphone forms the backbone of a new fighter jet, or a retired wind turbine powers the next generation of electric cars. That's the prize at stake. So, what role will you play? Will you follow the headlines, or help shape the solutions? If you found this journey through the rare earth labyrinth eye-opening, hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives, and share your thoughts below. What future do you see? What questions do you want answered next? The story of rare